The sun was setting over a quiet neighborhood outside Austin, Texas, when Jake Miller turned his old pickup truck onto his street. He had spent the afternoon working at a local repair shop, and all he wanted was to get home, make dinner, and help his 12-year-old daughter Lily with her homework. But the moment he saw his garage, he knew something was wrong. The door was hanging crookedly from its tracks. Jake stopped the truck for several seconds. He simply stared. Then he stepped out. The garage had been completely trashed. His tools were scattered across the concrete floor. Shelves had been knocked over, containers were broken, and his old motorcycle had been pushed onto its side. Jake slowly walked inside. On the wall, someone had spray-painted a threatening message. His jaw tightened. Lily came running from the house. Dad Jake immediately turned around. "Stay inside, what happened?" "Nothing you need to worry about, but the garage, I'll take care of it." Jake didn't want his daughter seeing fear on his face. For years he had worked hard to build a peaceful life for Lily. He had left behind a dangerous past, moved to Texas, and started over under a quiet life that nobody questioned. Before becoming a father, Jake had belonged to a notorious motorcycle club. People who knew him back then remembered a very different man. He had been feared because of his reputation, not because he searched for trouble. But Jake had walked away from that world. Years earlier, his daughter had changed everything. He didn't want Lily growing up around violence, threats, or people who solved problems with their fists. So he became a mechanic, worked long hours, and kept his past buried. Unfortunately, someone had apparently decided that his quiet life made him an easy target. Jake picked up one of his damaged tools. He examined it carefully. This wasn't random. He whispered. Lily appeared at the doorway again. "Dad, should we call someone?" Jake looked at her. Yes. He took out his phone and called the police. Before he could finish explaining, a black SUV slowly passed the house. Jake watched it disappear around the corner. He recognized the vehicle. The same men had been parked near the repair shop earlier that week. A few minutes later, the SUV returned. 3 men stepped out. One of them laughed when he saw Jake standing outside the garage. You finally noticed Jake remained completely calm. Lily stood behind him. Jake quietly told her to go inside and lock the door. Then he looked at the 3 men. "You made a mistake coming back." The tallest man smiled. "We thought you'd understand the warning." Jake looked at the destroyed garage, then at his daughter's house. His expression hardened. "You can threaten me all you want." He paused, "But you don't bring my daughter into this." For the first time, the men noticed something different in Jake's eyes. They had expected a frightened single father. They had no idea who they had just provoked. Jake stood between the 3 men in the entrance to his house. Keeping his voice calm, he had no intention of fighting them. His daughter was inside, and the last thing he wanted was to bring his old life back into her world. "You need to leave," Jake said. The tallest man laughed. "You think calling the police scares us?" Jake held up his phone. "I already called them." The man's smile disappeared. "You're bluffing." Jake shook his head. "No. And the cameras are recording everything." He pointed toward the corner of the garage, where a small security camera had been installed months earlier. Another camera covered the driveway. The 3 men looked at each other. Jake continued. "You damaged my property. You threatened my family. The footage has already been uploaded." One of the men stepped backward. "You should have thought about that before coming here." Jake didn't move. "I don't want revenge. I want my daughter to grow up without being afraid of people like you." Sirens could be heard in the distance. The men suddenly began arguing among themselves. The tallest one pointed at Jake. "This isn't over." Jake looked directly at him. "Yes, it is." Police vehicles entered the street moments later. Officers approached carefully and ordered the men to step away from the property. Jake immediately moved toward his daughter's house. "She's inside," he told one officer. "Please make sure she's okay." An officer entered with Jake's permission and brought Lily outside. A few minutes later, she ran into her father's arms. "Dad, are they gone?" Jake hugged her tightly. "Yes, they're gone." The police reviewed the security footage and photographed the damage. The evidence clearly showed the 3 men entering the garage, destroying property and making threats. Jake answered every question honestly. One officer noticed the motorcycle club patch visible on an old photograph inside the garage. "You know these people?" Jake looked at the photograph. "Not anymore." The officer studied him for a moment. "You've had an interesting past." Jake nodded. "But that's the past." The officer understood later that evening. The three men were taken into custody while investigators began processing the case. Jake returned to his garage. The damage was still everywhere. His daughter stood beside him. "Can we fix it?" Jake smiled. Of course, they spent the next weekend cleaning together. Lily organized the smaller tools while Jake repaired the shelves and motorcycle. The work was slow, but Jake didn't mind. Every repaired shelf felt like another piece of his peaceful life. Returning that night, Lily looked at him. "Are you ever going back to being that scary person?" Jake smiled. "No." "Why?" "Because I have something better now." He looked at her. "You?" Lily hugged him. Jake knew his past would always be part of his story, but it didn't have to control his future. The men had tried to destroy his garage. Instead, they reminded Jake why he had walked away from violence in the first place, and why protecting his daughter meant choosing peace, even when anger would have been easier.